fact that I am into business is the primary reason why I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because I felt that we would have a dialogue, based on a commonality that I don't necessarily have with other people.
Yeah.
And that the questions and the direction would be informed by two people who are very interested in the art of business.
For sure. I'm glad, man. I'm glad because it's the opposite for and with a lot of people that want to focus on the art. And I get it. Promise you I get it. But
I want to focus on the longevity of the art.
There you go.
And the longevity is predicated upon how well we do business.
Yes, and that's the foundation that holds up your art, right? Okay, hey, everybody. I'm Christoph Jenkins, founder and creator of The Poet Life and the Poetry Business Network. And this is the Poetry Business Podcast, and I'm excited to have a legend in my midst right now. If you don't know, you need to know, and you're going to find out. Taalam Acey, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How's everybody out there?
Yep. Really excited to be in Atlanta right now. We thought to do it virtually, and I said I'm going to be in Atlanta in a few weeks anyway for a conference. Why not link up for the second time? I know you performed at the Poet Life Fest a couple years ago, and had him go last because he crushed it. And why not? Because it just makes so much sense. Everybody surrounded him, the kids, the families, and everything, and they were just listening in awe. And let's talk and learn more about Taalam Acey. If you don't know, you're about to find out. So talk to me, man. Talk to me about your start in poetry. Where and when did poetry come in for you?
I've been involved in spoken word my entire life. I was raised off of it. When I was taught to read, I was taught to read with Langston Hughes books and County Cullen and Claude McKay and on, Arnabon Temps, Dudley Randall. And my parents were members of Amir Baraka's organization, Committee for Unified Newark. So, that was very arts and cultural. So I've been with poetry and performance poetry my entire life. I started really getting into it in the 90s, the mid to late 90s is when I started getting into slam and performing in East Orange at a spot called Bogies, performing in Harlem at the National Black Theater and then at the New Eureka Cafe in New York.
How old were you when you first started?
I mean, like I said, poetry goes back to before I could read. I learned to read by reading poetry and having poetry read to me. In terms of spoken word, I started taking it seriously around 97, 98. By 99, I was full-time. That's all I did.
Really?
Yeah. So for about 10 or 15 years, from 99 on, it was nothing but spoken word.
Yeah. You said a lot right there when you said that you were taught to read through poetry.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people forget how functional poetry is, right? Yeah. And a lot of people ask, like, so, okay, all right, I know poetry is great to help you release and express yourself, but how does it work in the everyday world? And I say just that. Do you understand that you were taught how to read through poetry? You know,
I understand it.
No, as them, when the people are trying to find out how poetry is functional at all, and I share with them that you were taught how to read through poetry, and people forget that. They're like, oh wow.
And to say that I was taught how to read through poetry is almost saying that I was taught how to think through poetry, right? So my initial understanding of cognition was through poets.
Wow. Okay. All right. So 97 and then 99, you really started taking it serious.
Yeah, 99, I put out like so the poetry CD, I guess, was recorded in 98, my first poetry album. And I just started taking it all over New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. Before long, I was in Texas and California and New Orleans and Florida with it, So it was about moving around and then moving around the world from there to London, to poetry festivals in London and around the UK, colleges, going to Germany and to Holland.
So how did you know? How did you know that it was possible to do poetry full time when, especially at that time, when people were saying there's no money in poetry, and how did you?
It may have been possible to do poetry full time at that time, but perhaps you would have had to do it through colleges, or you would have had to have a one man, one woman show and do theaters. It wasn't a thing to have a product and fly around the country with that product featuring or slamming. That was new. That wasn't a thing at the time. I didn't have any competition, so to speak, when I showed up in some city, far out city, with a CD. Their minds were blown everywhere I went.
Right, right. So, what does it mean when you say you took it serious? And the reason I ask that question is because some poets don't know what that means.
Took it like it was life or death. Took it to the point where if I did not sell product, I didn't eat. I couldn't go to the next town if I wasn't productive and what's the word? Enterprising.
Yeah.
I had to. So taking it serious that I put my life on the line in order to do it.
Yeah. Were you connected with other professional poets? Like, were you surrounded by, some poets?
Eventually I got to know poets, like every quote unquote professional poet of our generation throughout the country, because I traveled to every major city and some not so major cities based on where the poetry venues were. So a lot of the people who are very well known now were just like local poets to a venue, wherever they were from when I started coming around.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Cool. So when it comes to the business of poetry, what did you have to learn to take it to that next level?
You had business is P&L, right? Profit and loss. It's simply about what it costs you to do something and what you get in return. And you want the benefit of whatever you're doing to outweigh the cost. So the question of what you're selling, is it something people want to buy? Are you selling it for enough money to meet your overhead and your variable costs? Taking it really down the line of, and keep in mind, at the time I got into spoken word, I was running a consulting firm. So I was writing business plans every day. So the framework of, I laid out spoken word to that framework of a business plan, and I'm a student of business. So my MBA is in finance. I have a BS in accounting, and marketing is my hobby.
Right. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think where some poets may lack, if you will, is that business sense. So that business sense said to you, oh, this is a product in a sense, and this is a service that I provide.
Yeah.
I see.
And having conversations with, people who would have been much like you are now, back then.
Yes.
And really talking about like what works. You got to show the product from the stage.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got no time, if you're only going to do one poem, you better mention the product as soon as you get up there. If you got some time, you got time to work it in to the set as you go. Tell them, from the stage how much the product costs if you can, so they feel more comfortable and knowing that everybody's paying the same price.
Yeah.
Again, show it to them. Say things that make them want the product. Like general sales advice is always push the benefits of something and not the features, right? So you don't focus on telling them how long the book is. Tell them what the book will do for them. How will it change their life?
That's so good.
Why don't they want to leave here without that book? And it's not because of how much money you paid to get it made or the quality of the paper. What does it do for them? How does it change their life?
That's it. Because if we really think about it, the poet is a service provider. You provide a service to the people, right? And you're a public servant also, because what you are presenting to the people is supposed to impact their lives. Got you. That makes so much sense. Now, that is, I don't want to say a foreign concept to some people, but it is, because when it comes to poetry, some people's thought, I won't generalize, but some people's thought is, this is my poem and I wrote it. If they take it, they will. If they don't, they don't, type of thing. How did you not be in that mindset and be in the mindset of, I'm here to serve the people?
My understanding of just the concept of communication is that it's not about just that you said something. It's that you said something that people could digest. And if they're not digesting it, if they're not taking it in, then you haven't communicated. You've talked at them and not to them. So I wasn't raised, I was raised by a single mother, and it wasn't the type of upbringing where she just encouraged me anytime I had something to say, right? They say there are people who talk because they have something to say, and people to talk because they have to say something, and she did not encourage me to just say something. She encouraged me when I had something to actually say. So that taught me from an early age to really think about my words before I put them out there, and make sure it's worth the listener's time, and make sure you're speaking in what Malcolm would call it, the lingua franca, right? That language that everyone understands. Communication, the whole art, is about taking thoughts that the other person may even have but didn't know how to put into words, and then relaying it back to them.
Yeah.
It's all about communication. It's not about talking at people at all.
Right. Now, as far as reading the room, how does that play in for you?
I like to read a room early. So I used to love to get to a poetry spot before almost anyone was there. I would watch them. I watched the way they set it up. I'd listen to the conversations of the people setting it up. I'd definitely listen to the conversations of the people coming in the room. And then I did my most serious study when people started doing poems. If they had an open mic before I performed, I'm watching and I'm listening to what they're doing and how it's being received, because I have so much work that I know I could fit into the pocket that I needed to fit into. And because it's my work, it's always going to be authentic. Like, I don't have to sell out or sell myself short. I just need to pick the right pieces in the right order. And the way that I did that was by looking at the room, listening to what people were saying, who's with who, is it mostly women, what level of struggle, am I feeling in this room in terms of these people's lifestyles,
Yeah.
And all of these things informed the set that I was going to do. And on top of that, I could get on stage and decide, I think I need to switch this up. The piece that I thought would be perfect for number 4 actually goes better as number 2. Things like that.
Now, where did you learn that? Because does that just come to you?
I think you learn a lot when your life depends on it. You know what I mean? As funny as it sounds, to be in places that are not familiar to you, in cities and states and parts of the country, and to know that if you don't move this crowd, you're gonna have a different type of day tomorrow. You know what I mean? You have a different type of night tonight sometimes, in terms of where you're gonna be.
Yeah. So
you kind of learn what works and what doesn't work. And then, like I said, people who would have been like yourself, talking to them, and people saying, when I perform, I like it to go this way, or I'll do this. Even the whole, like, how important it is to show the product that you're selling to the crowd. That was somebody else telling me that was what worked for them.
Do you seek feedback after your performance?
Yeah, to a fault. People think that I'm lamenting over my performance, like, yo, what didn't you like? What do you like? I'm trying to gather information for the next performance. They're like, oh, it's in the past. There's nothing you can do about it now. And I'm like, yeah, there's nothing I can do about it now, but I can take what you tell me about now and apply it to all of my laters.
It's kind of like watching game tape for athletes.
Right.
That's why they watch game tape, not just to watch the opponent, but to watch themselves
and to see what they did wrong. I love asking what I did wrong. And it's usually after somebody tells me how great it was, then I'm to like, what would you have changed about it? What do you think I should have done differently?
Oh,
and the conversation I have with myself is usually about the poems, that I choose the right poems. were those poems in the right order, things like that.
Creating the set.
Right.
Got you. That you just gave a huge master class, because I've booked poets before, and that reading the room piece lacks today.
Yeah, I used to sit in a poetry venue with take a napkin and a pen, and on the bottom left-hand side of the napkin, I would write all the poems that might work for what I'm feeling from this crowd. On the bottom right-hand side, I would pick the poems based on the amount of time I had to perform. I would pick out 3 or 4 of those from that list. And then at the top left-hand corner, I would take the poems that were on the right side and put them in order, the order I think I'm going to perform in. And since I already knew the poems, it was about memorizing the order. You know, all I had to do was, if it was 5 poems, just memorize which 5 poems and what order I was going to do them in.
So, as far as the set is concerned, right? Do you have commentary or storytelling between said poems?
I try to be, I try to be careful with that.
Really?
When I step to a stage, I may say what's up, and that's it. You know, and that's the most. 9 times out of 10, if I step to a stage, I go straight to the poem, because I feel better after. I think the audience kind of like gets a kick out of not even knowing that you started the poem, and that and then a relief that you're not going to stall before you start the poem. And because I have so much to talk about with regard to product, I tend to talk about my product in between pieces versus, you know, a lot of the material I used to do. And I used to do a lot of material that wouldn't even work now anyway. It was too, it wasn't, it was too risque, or it was too, it didn't fit the body politic. You know, it wasn't political for today's world. So it was good to just let that stuff go. It was funny for then, not necessarily funny now, and I didn't want to work on that type of material. I wanted to work on things that explains to people why they should buy, you know, my books. Why should they buy the interview book, Permission to Speak? Why should they buy my poetry books, Trouble Soul Refinery 1 and 2? Why they should buy the vinyl album, the double album. Yeah.
Interview book.
The interview book I did during COVID, when most people were just stuck home.
Right.
I was flying around the country to New Orleans, up to the Redlands in California, to Flint, Michigan, to Philadelphia, and talking to the elders, talking to Abi Odoniguele and Umar bin Hassan, of the last poets, talking to Father Amdi from the Watts Prophets, talking to S. Pearl Sharp in LA, to Kamal Daoud in LA, to Kalama Yasalam in New Orleans, to Nana Camille Yarbrough in New York, and asking them about their life, asking them how poetry interconnected in their lives with music, with art, you know, painting, with performances, shows, about their love lives, their marriages, their children. What would they have done differently? Not just from the artistic standpoint, but from life. How would they have lived their life differently? How would they have approached art differently? So that's Permission to Speak. Yeah. Which is a book of 7 interviews.
Really? How is it presented? A book of interviews.
It's a book of interviews. It goes 1 through 7, starting with Umar bin Hassan. No matter of fact, it starts with Kamal Daoud and it ends with Father Amdi from the Watts Prophets. Yeah. But you know, this is Permission to Speak. On the back, you could see Umar bin Hassan, Father Amdi, and my boy Food for Thought, who wrote the introduction.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And
so that's Permission to Speak on my website. Okay. TaalamAcey.com.
Yeah, I'll put it down there for you.
Or KarmaPoet.com. KarmaPoet. For people, you know, who feel like there's too many A's in TaalamAcey.com. There's KarmaPoet.com. It'll take you to the same place.
How important is the history behind poetry for a poet?
The history is key. It's primary, and I've studied the history of spoken word my entire life. I've studied not just that. I'm a big fan of reading biographies. So if there's a jazz biography, or sometimes some of them R&B and rock and roll biographies, some hip hop biographies. I read LL and Chuck D and and Raekwon and Rakim, and I mean I've done mad hip hop biographies. I've read all kinds of rock biographies from from Rolling Stone to the Chili Peppers, and I tear up soul, blues player biographies and jazz, tear them up, everything.
What does that do for your poetry?
It informs the poetry. It reinforces my life. Like, oh, so it's not just me. You know what I mean? Somebody else lived this too. And then on top of that, it gives me, I've always moved in a way that what I did had to be sustainable. So it helps me understand how to make moves in the present time that will be sustainable for decades.
Right.
Because if I have relevance now, and I was relevant almost 30 years ago, it's not by accident. It's by planning.
Strategy, planning.
Right.
Yeah.
It's time to create an unforgettable experience at your next event with The Poet Life by booking a keynote poet. Poets excite your audience with motivating messages, charismatic delivery, colorful rhythm, powerful prose, and heart-filled stories with a style of spoken word that's tailored specifically to your event. The Poet Life has keynote poets in your city of all ages and backgrounds.
Visit thepoetlife.com to learn more and book your poet today.
Now, you said you came into it with a business mind already, right? How important is it to the poet who is interested in doing this full-time or even part-time?
Well, I think it's significant.
Yes.
And these days, I probably would study social media influencers. I would go to like K Love's page and to Opie West's page and to Black Chakra's page and try to see, how they're moving, you know what I mean? To get a more modern feel for how people are promoting themselves these days. I mean, the fact of the matter is, money is not a joke, and we could play like it's a capitalist tool of evil or whatever, but the reality is you only think about money like health, right? Which is to the extent that you don't have it. And you don't have to talk about it or flash it or make that, your end all be all, but you do have to take it seriously. You do have to respect it.
Yeah. That conversation is so key, and I find that we spend a lot of time honing the craft and we neglect the business aspect,
which is good. Like if you're independently wealthy, or you or you have if you have rebuked the use of any type of materialism, fine, I get it. Go ahead and do you. But in terms of trying to grow something in the same way you would grow your garden or grow a farm, I think it's very important that you figure out what works, what your market values more than the money in their pocket, right? They can't help but they love to give you money for your product because your product is worth so much more. Your product's gonna save their life. They can die with that money in their pocket. It's not gonna save their life. But your book or your audio product, it'll save their life. And communicating that is imperative. Walking out of the spot and not moving the product that you have. They used to say distribution is the process of moving a product from a place of abundance to a place of need. The place of abundance is your closet that has all your product. The place of need are all those somewhat relatively perhaps empty souls that need you to take that product from your closet and give it to them to put next to their bed.
Yeah, because we as poets say all the time, poetry saved our lives, right? But if it saved our lives, that means it can save somebody else's life.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Outside of performing poetry, what have you done because you're a poet?
I attribute all of that traveling all the way up into Austria. I remember deciding not to travel anymore. Like a friend of mine wanted to go, to the Middle East and all kinds of things back in the day. In London, the same way we had like discount like Value Jet and all that, AirTran back in the day. Here, you had EasyJet and Go and all of that in London. You could fly to Africa, you could fly all over Europe, and at the time it'd be like $50 or $100, excuse me. So the travel, I've met and interacted with way more people than I would have had I not been involved in poetry. And I've met more like-minded people than would have been possible if I had just gone by like telekinesis or telepathy or something. Like in the real world, in real life, I got to interact with people who got to see me perform. I got to see them perform, and we got to say, hey, I see you.
Mm-hmm. Got you. So you shared, or you hinted towards how you were able to stay relevant for almost 30 years. Like
that it took thought, that it continues to take thought. It's something that I think about, and do you want to, like, how your excuse me, your image, like how do you want to go out? Do you want to go out like a old car that don't run no more, or would you like to go out, still looking pretty good, and then you just kind of like, and I'm more like that. I'm kind of more like tipping on out a little bit. I'm not like going full throttle. I'm not showing up to the slams with all the 30-year-olds like, this is mine. Y'all ain't got no work for me. I'm not on that. I'm more the person that volunteer to judge the slam, and if they want some pointers or some criticism after, to give it to them if it's solicited. So to keep that dignity, to keep that gravitas, but to still keep a name that people are familiar with.
So for those who don't know who you are, right, the young folks, can you share some of your accolades?
I've put out 19 albums. I put out 8 books. Some of them are books of poetry. I put out one memoir. Excuse me, a couple of books of essays. I've traveled, around Europe, Mexico, Jamaica, Canada, both sides of Canada. The Toronto, Ottawa part, as well as the Vancouver. I have Hawaii, Alaska. So not just the 48 contiguous states. Not just the 48 contiguous states, but Hawaii and Alaska as well. I've put together albums for other poets, maybe 7 or 8 other poets. I've put albums together, produced their albums. I have, been considered the #1 thing you need to know about by BET for their show, The Five. I was on 3 episodes of that. I had a video that was in a movie called What Black Men Think, called a market for for the N-word.
Yeah.
I say it when I feel like it. I don't feel like it right now. And then that video was played on the documentary channel, on TV One, in various film festivals. Some of the work that is associated with my poems have won at Sundance, an audience award at Sundance, and so on and so forth, Sundance Film Festival. So it's been a good ride. I've done the Essence Music Festival a couple of years, for 6,000 seats. So it's cool.
Wow. You are the epitome of what a poet has aspired to be and do. And so what are you doing right now?
So right now, the push is for spoken word with the Grammys. So this will be the 3rd year of spoken word having its own category of performance poetry for the Grammys. Last year, I dipped my toe in a little bit, tried to see if I could understand how it works. This year, I returned. Last year was Thug Healer. This is Thug Healer 2. So this is the new album, and it's on vinyl, as you can see. So you can go to the digital service providers and hear it on Tidal and Apple and iTunes, and Apple Music and Amazon and so on and so forth, Google Play. But you can also get the vinyl album from the website. All right, it looks like this. It's a double album. I'm not going to open it. Resealable plastic. And there's only 300 of those. There may only be 300. I haven't decided whether I want to print up 1,000 or not. But there may only be 300. Each of them are signed and numbered too ahead of time. So, Like this one is number 69 out of 300. You know what I mean? And once they're gone, I don't know, I may not do anymore. I might just leave it at 300 because I'm that type of guy.
Yeah, that means you need to get yours like ASAP.
Yeah.
Wow.
And people have been. Some people have gotten 3 copies, I guess one to play, one to maybe put up as like an art piece, and another one in case they want to give it as a gift to somebody down the line. You know? So it's moving. And because people are buying the albums, people are coming and buying the albums and be like, yeah, send me a book or two.
Gotcha.
Send me some of the poetry books, send me permission to speak, interview book.
So what has been some of your roadblocks on your journey?
My roadblock to this sort of thing is really trying to communicate things to people that they're not ready to receive. So us trying to explain to people why it was important to sell product, which is why I went back to albums, right? Because the CDs went obsolete, and I'm not gonna sell cassettes, right? So that's why it's like going back to something and going to the whole heart of supply and demand and scarcity and what makes something unique, what makes it valuable, So part of the problem is just trying to take things out of my head and convince some of the other poets, and it's been like that from the beginning, what's important and what's not, Sometimes people feel like they already know it all. A lot of times people are delusional. They think they're way bigger than they are, and what can you do?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and so when you came to those roadblocks, did it just slow you down? I know it didn't stop you.
Personal roadblocks would be when I thought that CDs would be around forever, and they were not. And I ended up in a paradigm where CDs were where the majority of our money came from. We made more money selling CDs at shows than we made sometimes than the people made at their door. They're charging, I don't know, $10, $15 at the door, and we're selling 2 CDs to people for $10 or $15 each. You know what I mean? Depending on what was going on. So it was a big part of what made it work. And when CDs kind of went out of vogue, became this technological legacy media, then it was like, what else do we sell? And people were like experimenting, selling T-shirts. People were selling beads, and people were selling, whatever. But nothing really replaced being able to walk in with a book bag with 60 CDs in it, and that book bag is now $600 to $900, or sometimes we sell them for $20. The double CDs, now you got a book bag that's $1,200. And that was helpful to making a night or two, one of 2 nights or so on and so forth, to pay bills. And when that went away, it really it became difficult because the venues weren't pulling in the type of money that would justify paying you what you needed to be paid. When we started, $60, $70 to get you a pretty good hotel. You know what I mean? Now you need twice that to get a pretty good hotel.
Right.
Flights, you couldn't get a Southwest flight for more than $300 from New York to Los Angeles the same day. Now you could spend $800, $900 on that same flight, if, depending on what's going on. So the money, the expenses, the cost of providing the service went up. The means of revenue for, taking care of those costs dissipated. That was the challenge. So it was just a challenge of, what else to do. So I kind of laid low. I got other skills.
Yeah. I see. I
Rakim said I got other skills besides busting dope rhymes. The fact that I am into business is the primary reason why I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
Because I felt that we would have a dialogue, based on a commonality that I don't necessarily have with other people.
Yeah.
And that the questions and the direction would be informed by 2 people who are very interested in the art of business.
For sure. I'm glad, man. I'm glad because it's the opposite for and with a lot of people that want to focus on the art. And I get it. Promise you I get it. But
I want to focus on the longevity of the art.
There you go.
And the longevity is predicated upon how well we do business.
Yes, and that's the foundation that holds up your art, right? So as far as business in poetry, have you found a way to show the businesses, companies, and organizations how valuable poetry is.
And it's not, and that hasn't been my shtick. So
okay.
Jay Ivey, who started the one of the people who were very instrumental in the beginning of the spoken word category.
Sure.
That's been his thing, is the corporate sponsorship. Shion's like that too. It's like
Sure.
Shion Van Cleef, who worked with Def Poetry and was
Yes.
on Def Poetry, and is one of the founders of the Poetry Lounge in LA. That those are their thing, where they kind of have an interest in that corporate world. Food for Thought is like that too. My thing has always been more of an independent, nobody can tell me what to do, and not emotional. Nobody can tell me what to do, but more of from a business standpoint of, I don't have to comply with what somebody else thinks should occur. It's going to happen the way that I want it to happen because it's my resources that are making this happen. So Spoken Word Apex, those are all my resources. You know, if I put out an album or a book, those are my resources. And nobody's going to tell me, hey, you know, we feel like we should do it this way instead. Or and with Spoken Word Apex, we don't think you should have that lineup. We want to add these two people. Or, you know, so that's been important to me. There'll have to be a mesh, right? So there'll have to be a thing where I gravitate more toward working with larger firms, you know, to bring things about. I don't have to go all the way in that direction. I just have to gravitate a little more to it. That's all.
If you did not have the business acumen, how do you think all things would turn out?
I won't be doing this anymore. Like a lot of people who were doing poetry when I started doing poetry, they don't do it anymore. They don't come out to poetry. They don't want to hear the word poetry really anymore. You know, they just it was a fad. What makes it not a fad is business.
Yeah. Who was it? I think it was Pharrell. He said, art without business becomes abuse because you become abused by the people in business because you don't know the business.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that being the type of independent-minded person I've been has been helpful because I made a lot of mistakes that way, but they were small mistakes. I think like I said, I gravitate more towards relationships with brands, other brands.
Sure.
It's going to be helpful that I made those mistakes earlier on because then mistakes will become more magnified if you make them, you know, with larger.
If you don't learn from them.
Yeah, with larger stakes on the table.
I got you. So, so you came up with a lot of poets who are no longer here because.
Yeah, I mean, no longer in the poetry game.
Sure,
some of them are no longer on the world too,
yeah.
for you know
Very
numerous reasons. You know, and God bless their soul.
Sure.
But some people are just not involved in spoken word anymore.
Yeah. They were more focused on the love of the poetry.
Yeah, they were. You know, a lot of people I think were more focused on the moment, and this 5 minutes or 15 minutes of fame thing you can get, and then you know, and you live it, and then once it's over, you just kind of move on to the next thing.
Right.
I kind of hate sometimes that people use spoken word in a way where if you don't have talent anyplace else, I could do this, and I don't think it works that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because with a guitar, if you can't play the guitar and you get up on stage, everybody knows the person can't play the guitar. And if you're a singer, same thing. You're not holding notes. It's pretty obvious to everybody. But with poetry, sometimes people get up on the stage, and you know they're not really coming from their heart. You know, because it's not just skill and talent. If you can come from the heart, you know, you can move a crowd from the very beginning.
Yeah, and for those who choose not to go the route of doing poetry and being compensated, and their thing is, I want to do it for love, that is okay.
It is.
That is okay.
It's cool.
However, you can't also say or complain that you're not getting paid for your art and you're not getting paid for what you want. Right? It has to be you choose that you're going to do it for the love, and or you're going to do it for the love, but you want to exchange monetary value,
which
for
is
your
your right.
value. It's
You know,
your
I mean,
right.
you're providing a service. There's no reason why you shouldn't be compensated for the service you're providing, because that's what value means. You're giving someone something of value. You know, so they should give you back something of value. And maybe it isn't money. You know, maybe there's something else they could give you.
Right.
You know, sometimes with traveling poets, something of value meant that in return for whatever, people gave them a place to stay, something to eat, and they gave them some transportation. It could be that somebody they lend their professional services to you, like they're a lawyer, or they're an accountant, or they're a publicist, or so on and so forth. There's all kinds of exchanges that could occur that don't even involve money.
Yeah. Talk to me about the difference between the poetry community and the poetry industry. What's your thought on that?
I feel that as someone from the poetry community, I feel like we can be just delusional in terms of the reach that we have and how effective we're being. I think we're being about this effective still. You know what I mean? And I think in poetry industry is where you turn that other leaf and you really are paying attention to what's going on and what you're doing, and you learn a whole lot more. And you find out that what you thought was going on ain't necessarily what's really happening. And there's a whole lot more pushing required to move in the bigger world stage.
Mm. Would you say when you meant taking it serious, you taking a step into the industry?
I still don't even know to this day whether there is an industry per se. Sure. I think it's still a budding thing for spoken word.
For sure.
But moving into the world of spoken word as a business. These are the people who pay spoken word artists. I'm a spoken word artist. How do I get, that payment?
Yeah. Which means in the industry is where the budgets are.
Yeah.
Right? And they're already used to paying certain amounts of money.
True.
Right? And I think for a long time, most poets only knew of the community and didn't know of the industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I remember someone telling me in a conversation the other day that they, in an industry conversation, they were asked for a budget. They gave the budget. And the people said, okay, we'll double that.
Right. Yeah.
And let me know what it looks like.
Yes, definitely. So now since you know there is a difference, how do you maneuver in the community, right? Because the community is to commune with, but still in the community, you still want to.
Yeah, I mean, what I do for the community, or what I like, if I'm doing a open mic feature or something like that, I'm not like, what are you paying me or whatever. I'm not. That's not the thing for me. Now, on a larger scale, with larger shows, I've seen something interesting recently where, for instance, I got paid to do one show, and the person really felt like they were doing me a favor, and then 2 weeks later, I get an offer to do another show for 3 times as much money, and they were like apologetic that they couldn't pay me more. So, in terms of negotiating at a higher level, I would certainly tell you the most important thing is to ask for what you want, at least what you want, never less. Don't ask for less than you want, because you're going to end up resenting the show. And there's been plenty of shows I've gone to and asked people after the fact, what if I had asked for this? What would y'all have done? And they said we would have paid it.
Yeah, man. And I'm sure in the past you've shot yourself in the foot.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like, man, I should have went ahead and
asked for what? Yeah,
my first mind.
And as time goes, I make that mistake less and less.
Right,
yeah.
Right. I would rather offend.
Yeah, rather, definitely.
Because in business, it's really not offending.
And if you don't ask for what you want, then you're going to resent it. And when you resent it, you're not going to give the show that you could give. You're gonna feel bad about yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And here's the thing, folks. Like in business, in the corporate space, they're used to negotiations.
Right, and the first number that somebody throws out isn't necessarily
exactly.
You're supposed to go up. You're not supposed to be, oh, okay.
Correct. So if what you shot it was too high, okay, cool. Let's negotiate down if we need to. But I'm not going to shoot low and then you can't
negotiate up.
You can't negotiate up, right? Mm-hmm. So, what has, I guess in the past when you first started, what has exposure done for you?
I mean, it depends on the level of exposure. And just like a lot of other spoken word artists, I think in the past I've been a little delusional in terms of exactly how exposed I was. You know what I mean? So the fact that you can walk into a poetry venue in some other part of the country, people know you, that's cool. But that's nothing like fame. Like, I got friends where you just be listening to people talking about them, and they're like, yo, when he looks the other way, I'm going to get his wine glass and take it home. Like, what happened? You know what I mean? So, like, and just in terms of fame, to ask yourself the question as you're on a highway with hundreds or thousands of other cars, like, how many people know this artist? How many people, what percentage of these cars do I think heard of this person? Now, how many of them have heard of you? You know what I mean? And reconcile that, you know, with spoken word. And spoken word has a long, long, long way to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even if they don't know you off the bat, can you articulate what you've done, right? Can you share with them, this is who I am, and this is why I'm charging what I'm charging?
I can.
Yeah.
I haven't been the best at self-promotion. Georgia, who's just here, Georgia Me, she's really good at just explaining to people exactly the awards that she's won, and you know, and why this is important to pay, you know, this rate.
Yeah. But she even says, you know, she's not the best at, you know, promoting herself, and she could do better.
She was being coy.
Yeah. Yeah, I love her, man.
And when she says she's not the best at promoting herself, she probably was talking about the deal itself, not necessarily if somebody asks her what she's done.
Okay, got you.
Like she's pretty good at explaining to people what she's done in the past, and awards and you know, accolades.
For sure. So, future. What's that look like? What are your desires from now? Like,
man, I play it by ear.
Yeah.
I would love to do more product, you know, to put out more product. I would love to do more shows, but everything that I do, I'm kind of like I'm a stimulus response type person. I'm constantly like, if I'm on social media, I'm constantly, I put this out there and see what comes back. What happened? What did they say? What you know, and I learn from it. You know, okay, next time I'm gonna do this then. You know, the same thing with the shows. Like, you do the shows and you that's the stimulus, and you see what comes back. You know, how do people respond to it? You know, what came back to me from it? What would I need to do differently in the future? And so for me, I can't say the next thing is this next show I'm doing, or the next thing is I'm gonna put out another album next year. I gotta wait. I have to wait and see.
Yeah.
You know, how people responded to what I did this year.
Yeah. How are you able to relate to all ages? Like the Poet Life Fest.
I'm not sure that I am.
Well, listen, I had my kids there. I had my mom there. I had my wife there, and all of them were just like, you know, how they were surrounding you. They were just like, wow.
I mean, energy transfer really wouldn't really depend on age, right? It's kind of like people kind of know something special's happening, and you've been places, right, where people kind of looked at you. They didn't know you, but they just like felt something. You know what I mean? So energy transfer is like that. So then it's just a question of picking age-appropriate material, you know. But in terms of who you are, people feel it, especially people who don't have like their barriers up. They see the light of who you are.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. So it's the energy.
Yeah,
it's the energy. Yeah, I got you. So I'm learning that history would and could and should inform one's art. You know, before the Poet Life Fest, I was sharing with George and me that I just didn't know, man. I didn't know the history and the richness of especially Atlanta poetry. Can you share the legacy in Atlanta?
Unfortunately, I cannot. Right?
Gotcha.
I moved to Atlanta three years ago.
Oh, okay,
3.5 years ago.
Gotcha.
I haven't been here a long time. I know poets in
Gotcha.
Atlanta, but again, I
you
traveled
were
so
traveling,
much.
yeah.
I knew poets, you know, pretty much. And you could put me in Miami, or put me in New Orleans, or put me in Dallas or Houston or Austin, and I, you know, L.A.
Yeah.
I was on the L.A. poetry on the L.A. team, poetry slam team, a couple of years, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you were into slam?
Oh yeah, heavy.
Really? Earlier years?
Yeah. I was in slam from 97, I think. 97, 98, I got involved in poetry slam. I represented New York in 99. I started the New Jersey slam team in 2000. So 2000, 2001, I ran New Jersey slam team. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right.
And so 2002 was LA. I was in Los Angeles.
Okay. Now I see you. You doing your thing on TikTok.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing on TikTok.
I mean, most people don't.
When they talk about they're about to ban TikTok, sometimes I'll be like, yes.
Right. But you're doing your thing though.
So I don't know what I'm doing on TikTok.
Yeah. I mean,
matter of fact, Malcolm Jamal Warner,
Yeah.
who's Theo in the Cosby Show, he did a commercial for me that I didn't even know he was going to do on Instagram.
Really?
I never thought to put it on and it's too late now because it was for voting for the Grammys. And it ended, you know what I mean? It never dawned on me. Put it on Twitter, put it on Facebook, put it on Instagram.
Yeah.
I mean, put it on TikTok. You know what I mean?
But you know, we're learning. But you still can use that footage, and if and when you do documentaries and things of that nature. Yeah.
He's a real good friend. He's done a lot of of helping me promote stuff.
I got you. If you could leave something with the people, with the poets, that would encourage and inspire them for those who are interested in taking it serious, share something that could, I guess, direct them to do just that, take it serious.
Sure. Two words. Quit now. No, I would just say that I feel like you got to take your time with a piece. I'm writing a piece right now, man, and I am not rushing it. I don't care if I only write that one piece this whole year. I'm going to be known for what I wrote. It's part of my legacy. I want to take my time with it. So I would say that if you got something on your heart to write, take as much time as you need to take to write it. Always come from who you are your individual personality. So you want to write a poem that nobody else could write because nobody else would say it in the way that you would say it, and nobody feels about it quite like you do, or quite in the way you do for the reasons that you do. So when you write in your poems, man, you just always try to write that master work and never rush it.
Once you finish writing it, how long does it take you to own it and it becomes a part of you?
All right, now, a lot of people write on paper. I write in my head, So anything I've ever performed was written in my head, not extemporaneous. It took time, in most cases weeks, to write it in my head. Once I finish writing it, I know it, right? Because it was written in my head, but I don't know it well enough to perform it. So that can take.
You said a lot right there. You said a lot right there because a lot, I won't say most, I'll say a lot of poets, because they got it, they'll go with it. You're saying you got it, but it's not ready for
It's not ready for
performance.
performance. Even when I do get it ready for performance, it still generally isn't. To me, a poem doesn't lose its virginity until I've done it once or twice on stage. I don't really know it until then, because that's when you really find out where the gaps are in your memories when you're on stage trying to do it. You're like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? That's when you figure out, okay. So these 2 or 3 places in these pieces, I don't have that link together correctly in my head yet. You know what I mean? And then you focus on that link, and then boom, you come back that second time, and so on and so forth, and you got it. I used to say, man, I do the poem so much in my head, and then I do them out loud. I try not to do it in front of a mirror.
No.
I try not to, because I found like it's easier to do it in front of a mirror than to not. I try to, like when I really got it, I try to do it with the radio on or with something playing.
So
that's really,
distraction.
but not just something. Not just noise. Okay. Something I really like a record I really want to sing or vibe to, or a show that I really like to watch. And I still do it.
Takes your mind. Okay.
Yeah, so it takes a while. It takes, after I've written it in my head, even though I know it, it still takes me a couple of weeks before I'm even contemplating doing it on stage.
Was that always like that?
When I was a little younger, my memory was better, so it probably took less time.
Okay.
I could probably do it probably only took a week from the time I wrote a poem until I was ready to perform it back then.
Really? Man, that alone, if you heard nothing else, right there is so much value that you should be taking in if you're a spoken word or presenter. Taalam, man, I really appreciate, you taking out your time to sit with me and talk poetry and business because, I think it's very important, as you all can see, he takes it very serious.
Very serious. And that's why I wanted to talk to you because, like I said, I just thought we would have
for sure
a common perspective, a common interest that would generate perhaps a unique perspective for people who are watching this later, things that perhaps they didn't think about, questions that no one would have necessarily thought to ask me. Mm-hmm. And I answer questions sometimes based on who I'm speaking to.
Sure.
So I may have answered things differently for you than I might have for other people because of where you are.
Right. Most definitely. Where can they find you, man? Where can they support you?
TaalamAcey.com, TaalamAcey.com, or Karma Poet, KarmaPoet, one word.com. They go to the same website. I'm Taalam Acey, Taalam Acey on Instagram and Twitter, and Facebook. I'm AC Fans.
How long have you had Karma Poet?
Not long.
Okay, got you.
2 or 3 years.
Okay, got you. Beautiful. Folks, listen, man, check him out, especially those who aren't familiar, those younger folks. You'll get a wealth of information, as you can see in this episode. So keep digging. Go check him out. You'll see what I'm talking about, what he's talking about as far as his history in the game, and this is what taking it serious looks like. Because when you take it serious, it gives you the longevity. Okay, when you incorporate the business that sustains the art and not just the art. You'll be in the game as long as you choose to be. All right. So this is the Poetry Business Podcast. Listen, we have a community called the Poetry Business Network. Go to poetrybusinessnetwork.com and learn. We have some classes. We provide advice. And what I would love to do is start to bring poets like Taalam and impart knowledge and wisdom into the network. And so listen, it's the Poetry Business Podcast, and we're out, y'all. I appreciate y'all.
Peace.
Man, I appreciate you, man. This is beautiful. What you got going on this weekend, man?
Welcome to the Poetry Business Network, where poets and artists from around the world come together to connect, build, expand, and grow. Immerse yourself in a community of ambitious professionals actively transforming themselves from individuals to entities that add value to the marketplace with their art. With the Poetry Business Network, you'll have unlimited access to exclusive resources. Elevate your skills, knowledge, and understanding of the poetry industry in an ever-evolving landscape of business. Leverage the power of networking. Connect with like-minded, professional poets and artists globally, fostering relationships that can open doors to countless opportunities in around the world. Encourage business success with our mentorship programs. Gain invaluable insights from seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the poetry industry. Stay updated with cutting-edge industry trends. Our carefully curated classes, workshops, and tools ensure you're always ahead in this fast-paced world. So, are you ready to join us at the Poetry Business Network? Step into a world where poetry and business meet, and success is inevitable.
Poet Life